So we allow for this kind of the concept of digital innovation hubs, this test before you invest. So allow people to test their products, develop new products, move them through maturity life cycles, and then potentially into the market. Yes, some of these services could be considered commodity services, but we always say if a credit card can solve your problem, we're probably not for you, because it's really the expertise that comes together with it. How do they use those services is more important, and there's a wealth of knowledge across the research and academic space that we want to make available. Again, many of these people have no idea about EC funded projects. So they don't even know about the funding opportunities that are available to them. So again, we want to communicate what is available, not just through ours, but through other initiatives as well. So of course, access to the services, compute, storage, data management. We have partners for machine learning and artificial intelligence. There's a number of different data providers out there. So how do we facilitate access to the data itself? We have a number of tools and applications that can be reused. And then this other one is visibility. This is a very underrated value for small companies, which is by partnering with international organizations or European-wide organizations, it raises the profile of what they would otherwise get in their local market. And let's be honest, small companies have all of their resources are specifically dedicated to developing the product that they have. They have very minimum, if zero, marketing budget. So by partnering with such these international collaborations, all of a sudden they're in material, they're on websites, they're being invited to conferences, and it just then allows them to enter this wider network to then participate in other projects or other initiatives. So we want to be an open community. So we kind of had to understand, okay, well, how do we operate the Digital Innovation Hub itself? But then how do we facilitate engagement, and who do we really want to be engaging with? So we kind of looked at our wider stakeholders and our wider communities so that we could develop this as a community-wide. So yes, we want to provide, we want to support individual SMEs. So that's one of our objectives, running innovation projects. But we also want to be a channel for strategic partnerships, engagements with other initiatives, such as Enrich, for an example. So I don't have time to go through all of our business pilots, but just to say we've run 18. They're in a vast number of different sectors across a number of different industries. But we have kind of made, let's say, a summary of some of the success stories that are available in the publication if people are interested offline. And again, these are just a snapshot of some of the partners that we're working with. Some of them are funded projects, some of them are SME associations, some of them are just commercial providers. You'll see there is Enrich, because I myself, I was invited to be part of the Innovation Advisory Committee as part of the Enrich process. And then also Ute was very kind to join. We had a final showcase event for the EOSC Hub project, and Ute was gracious enough to join in on that. So we already have an existing relationship. This isn't new, but I would like to kind of also use this coffee break as an opportunity to kind of keep that momentum going. So moving forward, I think this is pretty much the end. So if we want to operate this as a standalone thing, we have to have some agreement in terms of how do we operate. So we developed this memorandum of understanding along with the terms of reference that defines out what's the purpose, partner rights, expected contributions, meetings, how's decision-making happening, resolution of conflict, all of that kind of stuff. So we do have this kind of independent document that anybody who wants to join the Digital Innovation Hub can agree to. But then from a financial standpoint, EOSC Future is going to be the next project after EOSC Hub has finished. It formally started in April of this year, which will continue the evolution of the Digital Innovation Hub and start to bring it from outside of let's say a smaller view of the European Open Science Cloud to start accessing a wider partner network. But we are looking for also in-kind contributions. This is what I mentioned about developing strategic partnerships. working with other EC-funded projects, because again, that multiplier effect really helps the efficiencies with any lack of resources that one have. Then we'll use the EOSC Future project as an opportunity to maybe refine the business model. That if, do we really want to set up a legal entity? Do we really want to go down the whole membership fee route? Or is there some more clever business models that we could look at introducing? We'll be evaluating over time. But I can appreciate there's a little bit of membership fee fatigue from across the community. So if you guys are interested, we have our own dedicated website that's independent of any individual project that you can find more information. We have our own social media accounts, so if you want to join us and follow us, we're always looking to increase our social media presence. But ultimately, if you have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you about them now, or you can send me an email at business@ and we can discuss further. So with that, I can stop, and hopefully I didn't take up too much time, and hopefully I stuck to the time. So.
Oh, it's perfect. Thank you very much, Sy. That's very interesting, and I definitely see a lot of opportunities and kind of potential collaboration with Enrich, not only because you're part of our IAC, but also like with some of the activities you presented. I think going further in discussion with the case studies that these brochures you developed could be very interesting, discussing this with Nikolai, for instance. And other, but I don't want to take too much space on this. Does anyone have a question for Sy? Maybe you can stop sharing so we can see the audience.
There we go.
Using your services, how you manage the fact that EOSC is a bit of a misleading acronym, as it's not really the cloud, not that open, it's open to more than Europeans, and there's more than science, that none of the letters are really what it says in the team. Then how do you go around to explaining that it's not what it says it is and it's something else?
Welcome to my life. Yeah, this is yeah, so in fact, we were involved in this evolutionary process, because really at the beginning of the EOSC, it was supposed to be more of the cloud in the traditional sense, or at least that's what people understood them to be. But you know how it is whenever like the European Commission goes and wants to develop some initiative, it becomes almost a magnet, right? Where everybody then starts to join. So I think it grew over the course of time. So in fact, our 6 business pilots that you look at that we started the project with, they were all using infrastructure services, because in 2018, that's what EOSC meant, right? Was the infrastructure services. But then it grew over time, where we started adding in community specifics and data and all this kind of stuff. So the cloud became itself nebulous, right? So this is why I tried to use, it's a harmonization of the research space and try to, let's say, de-emphasize the word cloud in terms of its cloud computing. Also, it's a bit challenging also for me, because I come from a foundation that offers cloud computing. So I always have to try to have a delicate balance between my own conflicts of interest sometimes. But yeah, it is hard to communicate this, especially with a commercial company that has no idea what any of this is about. It's hard enough for the people in the research and academic space who basically live this on a day-to-day basis, still find themselves sitting in meetings and arguing with themselves about what the EOSC means. And can you define the EOSC for me? That's kind of still happening. So I personally just try to stay away from that and just say, look, there's lots of services that are available. There's a lot of data that's available, and that you can reuse it. And I really tried to just sit down with the company and first try to understand what are their problems and what are they trying to solve. And that's kind of the service that the Digital Innovation Hub provides, is you don't have to worry about the complexity of what's in the marketplace or what's in the portal. That's our job. So I first understand what's the problem, and then we do the mapping on what would be the potential services that are available in the marketplace or what data they could do. And then we move the pieces together, and then they just participate. So, and that's the kind of the main value of the Digital Innovation Hub, because if they just go to the marketplace, there's like, I think there's like 200 some services now available. How do you make sense of how do you make sense of that? And I think unless you know what you're looking for, you're going to have to talk to a human. You're going to have to talk to somebody. And for us, it's us. Talk to us. We'll help you make sense of what's there and what's needed. And we'll coordinate with the service providers to make sure that you get what you need. So, yeah, it's a long-winded answer to a very complicated, it's a complicated problem, but you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head. It's a confusing term.
Thank you. I have a
Does that answer your question at least?
I am, you know, I understand that there are a lot of other things offering. I suppose what it does come to mind, as you said, this is public money, and it's a huge amount of money. And for not delivering the cloud as people were expecting, then I suppose it's a tough sell that harmonizing, and a lot of people are very aware that there are a lot of things out there that they are not in.
Yeah.
Then you start, you know.
Yeah. So. Yeah, this is generally an issue with acronyms as a whole, and you know, like when companies start. I mean, even it happens in the commercial companies like BT was like, it was British Telecoms, but they started getting into other stuff. They're like, we're no longer an acronym. EGI, if you technically speaking, EGI is no longer an acronym. Why? Because it used to be the European grid infrastructure, but grid was a very specific technology, and we offer many more services or many more technologies in addition to just grid computing or your traditional batch computing. So we also had to move away from acronyms. So I think the European Open Science Cloud is eventually just going to be EOSC is a concept, and you just refer to the EOSC as this shared research space. But it won't stop people from spelling it out later. So Ute, you were going to say something?
I have a question actually to the participants who are member in one of the cluster projects for EOSC, because I know some of you are in EOSC Live, or we are in PANOSC, others are in Refair. The question is, how do you in those cluster projects interact with industry? Because I think they all have somewhat the mandate to do that. Or is it just my default assumption that might be wrong?
Well, I think EOSC Future will now have a more direct connection to the cluster projects. So I think I think that's also the opportunity, which is after EOSC Hub and EOSC Future, we're now expanding out. So what we do is we need to kind of like formalize it. And that's actually a big question that's happening in EOSC Future right now, which is what is that formal connection point to whenever somebody comes through the Digital Innovation Hub, there's an industry thing, or vice versa. How are we going to have these formal connections in any type of coherent or efficient manner? But that's part of the objective of EOSC Futures, is now to make those connection points. Personally speaking, I either see it going both ways. Either they're offering services that somebody in our pilot can use, or we see them as the source of expertise in a specific sector. So then we kind of redirect and say, okay, you know, maybe we should go through EOSC Life, or we should go to PANOSC, or we can go to something, because that community has that specific expertise that specific business pilot is looking for. Because I always say this before, we're very few people, and so we don't know everything and we can't do everything. But what I need to know is I know who to go to whenever somebody needs something. So I'm a problem identifier, and then I can find the solution for them that's not going to be delivered by me. So I need to make sure that in EOSC Future we have these clear contact points and these clear mechanisms for reaching them. If not, it's not going to work.
Anyone from wants to, yeah, Marco?
Thank you, Charlotte. Now, I would just take this occasion to ask to see what is the aim of EOSC Future.
So the aim of EOSC, so let's say EOSC Hub was, let's say, the first implementation project. So there was EOSC Pilot, but that was more of like a conceptual thing of how trying to define stuff. What actually is it? EOSC Hub was kind of the first implementation, like so setting up the internal core services, AAI, monitoring, accounting, and all that kind of stuff. And then starting to involve some of the thematic services and competence centers and start to kind of build it. But it was still only a subset of the wider EOSC. So it was kind of that first implementation. EOSC Future pretty much has everybody, and it's really now everybody's involved. So you kind of have to now take what EOSC Hub started and now kind of either replicate or expand that to then involve basically that entire landscape slide that I showed you. That's what EOSC Future is. It's basically now taking that and involving everybody. So let's call it, it's going to be a bigger beast than what EOSC Hub was, but that's pretty much the, and I think EOSC Future probably has a number of different challenges, because now there are not only the cluster projects, but now there are a bunch of the service provider projects that now they're going to have to engage with. So for an example, EGI ACE, which stands for Advanced Computing for EOSC. So EGI is going to be the computing infrastructure. But then there's the DICE project, which is going to be providing the storage and data management stuff. All of those projects need to be working directly in collaboration with EOSC Future from the service provision point of view. So that adds in some additional complexity as well. So it's going to be really interesting. And it's only a 30-month project as well. So yeah.
Quite challenging, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Claudia, I think you raised your hand. Claudia.
Yes, I actually have a question that's maybe quite basic, but looking at your open call that you did and how you organized it, and the wide range of projects that you took in, how did you manage internally the identification of the expertise and resources to your proposals? Because that's like, we are in EOSC Live, we are facing this issue that of course we are limited by the expertise and resources that we have in the consortium, and if we keep this very open and have a wide range of projects with different scope coming in, it's sometimes difficult to mobilize resources quickly. So how do you deal with that?
This is a fantastic question. My answer would be, do you have a Marcin? Because that's who we had. This guy, Marcin Polchenik from PSNC, he was our business pilot coordinator, and it was hard. It was hard because most of that stuff didn't exist before. So it was like, it was easy when people needed infrastructures, because that's who were the main partners and stuff. But once the commission, and also it was kind of a need to demonstrate the value of the EOSC, we needed to go outside of our initial bit. And it wasn't easy. There was some bits that could be coordinated, and so I'll give you two options. There's two examples. One was, when they needed specific services, we did an internal call for service providers. So because EOSC Hub didn't have cascade funding, we weren't able to actually redistribute money, but we had to try to find a mechanism for redistributing it internally. So we were given a pot of budget inside of EOSC Hub that we could use to redistribute to service providers to incentivize them to give us the support that we needed. But again, we were limited only to consortium members because of the financial instrument. So we could do a call saying, we got these specific requests from the pilots. calls for expression of interest. Providers would then say we could support that. That was a little bit more systematic. When it came to the expertise, this was a chicken with its head cut off, running around trying to, and it was hard. It was hard because not everybody was part of the project. The person that you had expertise, where were their funding coming from? And just trying to identify them. And you have personal networks or established networks. And this was hard because it didn't exist. And I think this is what we need to become more systematic on in EOSC future, because as soon as you widen out, every one of those questions that you just answered, you just asked, needs to be solved. Who's providing what service and under what model, and how do you do that in a transparent way and stuff? So I can say during EOSC Hub, it wasn't really that well defined because we were working on it as it was happening. But if we want to do this and scale moving forward, we have to solve this in a systematic way. So doesn't really answer your question, but I think it's the current situation as far as I understand it. Does it kind of match what you were thinking?
Yep, thanks.
Thanks. It's already 3:30.
Oh, wow.
Maybe we can go for one more question.
Nigel had a question. No,
Yeah,
Nigel had a
Nigel.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, following up on that, because you have a very ambitious networking role, and well, in Enrich, we're very much involved as well with setting up a network with industry. And we're into industry contact officers and industry liaison officers, as you know. And I guess what I'd really like to say is, what can we mean for each other? What would you like to see from Enrich, which would make your networking role much easier? Because the scope is tremendous. We share common interests in doing this. So, I'd be interested in any ideas you have in that area.
So I think you've identified exactly what I think the collaboration between Enrich and EOSC DIH should be, which is how do we formalize those contact points that you already have available so that we can add those to our network so that we can either access them or make them visible and available to others. We have our website where we can figure out ways to do it. I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I think this is exactly one of the things that we should work on in a collaboration between Enrich and the EOSC, because this is how we scale, which is we reuse existing networks, and that gives me a big pool of people to be able to tap into whenever somebody's asking me a question. I'll be like, well, oh man, who do I go to? I want to be able to easily identify who are the contact points, and doing that through Enrich to me totally makes sense.
Yeah, I think we should keep on this discussion within the Enrich, like with the STB, and see eventually if we should have a workshop or something to identify possible collaboration and how we can support each other.
100%.
So, I mean, our time is out now. Is there any more question or comment before we close this very interesting session? No?
Well, I hope it was useful for those who joined.
Yeah, it was very interesting, and I think there's a very big potential, and I'm looking forward also to following what you're doing with the EOSC Future project, and keep our discussion. So as you said, you are in our IAC, one of our IAC members, so we will also keep discussing in that context. So thank you very much, everyone. I wish you a great afternoon, and I hope to see you next week.
Shall we say what we do next week?
Yeah,
Briefly?
sure. Next week, we're gonna host our Attract partner, friends, who will present their project, and the second phase of this project that has just recently been kicked. And so it's a kind of a continuity to this conversation, and I hope you will be able to join again. More details, registration, information, and so on will come as from tomorrow.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for your
Bye.
interest.
Thank you, everyone.
Good to see you.
Bye.